Hello everybody, welcome to OriginalContentHD and welcome to another Jumputi Heroes discussion video. Today, we have a lot of things to cover, so I'm just going to jump straight into it on my first topic. What's going on with the Taiwan server? Things have always been handled a little differently on the Taiwan server, so seeing some strange things that have happened recently won't really come as a surprise to most. This year, both servers have been increasing the number of limited grade units being released, but the Taiwan server even more so than Japan. They picked seemingly random units to upgrade to limited, and in a lot of cases, they didn't even give them a very good kit to go along with the upgrades. Two recent and rather bizarre choices were Irina from Assassination Classroom and Shaunark from Hunter x Hunter. In some cases, it might make sense to upgrade a unit. For example, earlier in the year, when Jolene was added to the JP server, we know that there's an issue with the Taiwan server and JoJo content. So it wouldn't have been a surprise to see a yellow limited grade unit bought in or upgraded from standard gacha to replace her as a unit and provide the Taiwan players with a replacement for her skills. There are also cases where a previously Taiwan exclusive unit is ported over to the JP server, and now the Taiwan server have nothing to replace it with when it's their turn for that event. In cases like this, I mean, you could even say Shaunark was a case like this. The Taiwan server already had Byakuya, so they couldn't add his banner for the 5.5 event, and they instead upgraded Shaunark from standard gacha to limited. But the issue is, right now, there is no event running on the Taiwan server. There are events, there are stages, they have some reprints and some filler, and, you know, they got that new Togoro's Brothers stage that we got. But other than that, nothing. The last new character to drop was Akashi. That was about 10 days ago or so, and there's been nothing new anywhere. Nothing on Facebook, nothing on in-game news, nothing in the data download, not even a teaser. This sort of thing has happened before, but it's coming at a bit of a strange time, a time that raises some questions. You see, we just got the shiny new Yo Asakura on the JP server, which is a unit that we basically assumed could never be added due to the complicated situation involving the series and the character usage rights. He hasn't made an appearance on the Taiwan server. His banner was replaced with a reprint equivalent, basically the same banner, but it had Kuzan, who they already had on the Taiwan server, instead of Yo. But regardless of his exclusion, the Taiwan server should have moved on to the Sket Dance event by now. There should be no issue with that event whatsoever, but instead they get nothing. I mean, even if they needed to make the Sket Dance event a little bit longer to fill a gap, they could have, because I mean, it's only a 10-day event on Japan's server, but then again, the Taiwan server schedule has always been a little bit strange, so maybe that's nothing to be concerned about anyway, right? Well, in the last week or so, we had an official announcement for the global version of Crash Fever. The global version of Crash Fever will be shutting down. For those that don't know, Crash Fever is a game run by Wonder Planet, who are the creators of Jumputi Heroes. Wonder Planet has undergone some restructuring this year. That includes relocation of offices, it includes changes to the management and operations of the services that they are providing, and in certain cases, and in this case with Crash Fever, the termination of certain services which they deem to be unsustainable moving forward. But there's another game by Wonder Planet. They don't just do Crash Fever, they don't just do Jumputi Heroes, they also have a game that's quite new, a game that came out this year called Alice Fiction. But unfortunately, Alice Fiction has succumbed to the same fate. the global version of Alice Fiction has entered what they are calling a maintenance mode. You can still play the game, but there is no new content being added to it. All of the content that's being added to the JP version is not being ported over. Just, you can play what's already on the game, and that's it. So, it's a bit strange. It's a bit concerning, to say the least. For the Taiwan server players, obviously, I really do feel bad if it does end up shutting down. I mean, this is just speculation, of course. But I would feel bad if it does shut down, because there's a lot of people who put a lot of hours into that game. But in terms of, for people that have only ever played on JP, who only care about the JP server, there is a potential upside. I feel like even until quite recently, the developers have had to take certain considerations into what's being put into the game on both versions, and worrying about how they're going to do certain things in the Taiwan server. And in that sense, I think the Japan server has been held back ever so slightly by the Taiwan server. I mean, think about how much potential JoJo's Bizarre Adventure content there is that there could be in the game, and yet it's very rare to see any JoJo content released outside of a JoJo feature festival, which, now that we've got parts 1 to 6, it seems like those JoJo feature festivals aren't really on the menu anymore. Sure, it's possible we could get part 7, it's possible we could get part 8, and it's possible we could get more content from the earlier parts, but the devs don't really seem to be leaning in that direction. Additionally, any series, any characters with a complicated rights situation are always going to be a lot easier to deal with if you're only worrying about the JP server. Admittedly, yes, you can just not release those characters on the Taiwan server, but that does make the balance and the content situation just a little bit more difficult. So, potentially, the Japan server could proceed into the future unrestricted if the Taiwan server ends up shutting down. It might make no difference whatsoever, but I know, at least for JoJo fans, even if it means just that little bit more content and recognition, I think a lot of people would be very excited about that. Then we also have to consider the suspicious roadmap. To further fan the flames of this speculation, the most recent roadmap revealed little to nothing about upcoming content. Yes, we know what series should be featuring in this next upcoming event, but beyond that, all they've really told us is general themes and ideas for events, nothing concrete. Now, what if, hypothetically, the Taiwan server were planned to be shut down, or maybe they'll do the same thing they did with Alice Fiction where they enter that maintenance mode or whatever, sometime soon, and the developers knew that, and the upcoming content was planned with that in mind. For example, what if the Setsubun event is like a Shaman King feature festival? It seems like Shaman King can't appear on the Taiwan server, so in theory that event would need to be completely skipped for them, or they would need to replace it, unless of course the server was shutting down. All I'm really suggesting here is that it may be possible that we perceived JoJo to be the only thing that the Taiwan server couldn't add, but it's possible that there are lots of things that we've wanted to get added to Jumputi Heroes, and due to issues with getting them on the Taiwan server, they've been delayed. Stuff like Slam Dunk, stuff like Chainsaw Man, stuff like Jujutsu Kaisen. What if they have been delayed from being added to Jumputi Heroes because there is an issue adding them, maybe not to Jumputi in general, but specifically to the Taiwan server, and they're going to have to find a way to replace them, to figure out how they're going to sort out the content around that. What these issues could be exactly, I mean, I don't know. Again, I am really just speculating. It could be a distribution and a usage rights issue. It could also be, I have a feeling for a lot of these series, it could be a money issue. I mean, if the devs have to pay for permission to use certain characters in the game and certain series in the game, they might have to pay more to do that for a game that's outside of Japan. It might be like an inside of Japan, outside of Japan type situation. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of games, say for example on Google, they're restricted by region because of rights issues, because of distribution issues. I can't release this game globally because I don't have the right to do so. So it's very possible that we have this Japan version of the game, and you could pay to, say, have Jujutsu Kaisen in the Japanese version of the game, but then if you would also have to pay again, or maybe pay more to do the same thing to use those characters in the Taiwan server, well, they might have their reasons to think it's not worth paying that extra money. And at the same time, if you have it in one version and don't have it in the other, you have to replace it. And the characters that replace it, how are you going to handle that? How, like, people are going to want those characters in the JP version as well. So when you pull those characters over, what replaces them again? And it's just this endless loop. Obviously, and I'll say it again, this all remains a speculation, but I'd like you to consider it as we talk about the upcoming event, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. For now, let's talk about the dev notes. We get new dev notes towards the end of each month, and recently they've not had much of interest to talk about. There are plenty of things the devs have promised or said they would consider working on in the past, and we haven't heard anything about it in a long time. For example, they promised quite a long time ago that they would look into reworking the gacha animations. You know, maybe if you've played any other gacha games, quite often they have special effects that indicate you're going to get a 5-star other than just it glowing rainbow. You know, you could have fake outs. It could be, oh, it's all 4-star. Whoa, there's a 5-star. Maybe there could be a special animation if you get a Muso or a Densetsu. There are lots of different things they could do to make summoning on gacha more engaging and more fun. The last thing anybody wants to see is a gold book and then you click on it and it's all gold and then you just didn't get anything good. But if there's a chance you could be bamboozled, I think people really enjoy that. And they know that. That's why they mentioned it in the dev notes. But they have gone radio silent on that one. And it's not the only thing. There's lots of things that they have said in the past and then stop talking about, and we don't know if they're working on them or they've decided it's not worth doing. But you know what? Let's see what they have for us this month. Firstly, people have been getting kicked out of co-op lobbies. Normally you get kicked out after 2 turns of inactivity, but for units with double tap, it counts each tap as a turn. And you can get kicked out instead after 1 turn. And all the devs had to say on that was they'll look into it and maybe they'll fix it later. Next, people have been complaining about how long it takes for paint bubbles to pop, myself included. It wasn't as much of an issue before, but now there are so many units that make paint bubbles appear that you end up having to wait ages for them all to burst at the end of your turn. And once again, the devs have said they will look into it, and potentially they will try and fix it later. Next, people have complained about the coin toss at the start of tower battles being too important due to the way that skills work in the game. That coin toss at the start is a 50-50. You know, you have no way to influence that 50-50. And depending which way it lands, that could be the decider between you winning the battle and you losing the battle. The devs said they're going to look into a way to balance this in the future, try and find a way to make it not broken, but at the same time, you know, not unfair. And they said they'll look into it and maybe they'll fix it in the future. The same thing they've said for pretty much all of these. Some players have asked for more Unity battle events to be held, and they are considering if that is possible, they'll look into it and then maybe they'll add more in the future. They've gone back and forth on the Unity battle issue a lot. They can't seem to find a balance. Personally, for me, I think if you have 2 a month, and they are the current Unity battle setup that we have now, but give it like 7 days instead of 5, 2 7-day Unity battles. And, you know, if people want to go crazy and farm like crazy, they can. But for most people, they'll get to the point cap and that'll be it for them. I think it's 100 mil or whatever. They'll get that, and that's enough for them. I think for a lot of people, just getting those rewards is okay. And then the people that want to go crazy, they can. I think that's fine. But they've had months where they've had none, and they've had months where they've had like 4. They can't seem to get it right. And what they've said again is they will look into it. And maybe you'll see more or less in the future. They don't know. And then finally, many series of characters and items and stuff still unavailable from the logbook. The devs have asked people to be patient. Some of these events will be added at a later date to the logbook. And others, they're looking to reprint more regularly moving forward. And they have some events planned in the near future where they will be reprinted. So there's still some characters, I think, where you wouldn't notice it if you've been playing since like day one, because you probably have them all maxed. But for people that have missed them, it's like, oh, how do I get them? You just can't. They just don't get reprinted. I'm still very unclear as to why some of those are. Because, like, obviously, say, for example, if it was like a Shaman King situation where it's like, we don't know if Yo's ever coming back. If there was an event with Yo, and then Yo never came back and his event never came back, then we would be able to go, okay, maybe there's like an issue there. But for stuff like, I think that one of the Rurouni Kenshin free-to-play units has like never come back. I don't know if that's still the case, but for a long time it was. It's the Fujita Goro. For the longest time, just not available, and I don't know why. So there's definitely reasons for some of these things, but if they're not going to make it clear, then what can we say? What can we do? And, I mean, I guess you can gather from how quickly I tried to breeze through those. I don't really feel like they said that much of value here. Out of everything they mentioned, speeding up the rainbow bubbles, I feel like that's the one thing I can see them fixing relatively soon. Because it not only slows down PvE, but also Tower. And when people start complaining about Tower, then it gets real. Yes, they probably need to fix the coin flip for the Tower players. But that's a far more complicated issue, because it's been a coin flip ever since the game started. Well, ever since Tower started, anyway. And yes, I can understand how that coin flip could decide between you winning and you losing. But I don't know how they fix that quickly. But with the rainbow bubbles popping, they could just speed that up. Or they could make it instant or whatever. They could definitely improve that. Even if it's just an option in the menu where it's like, I don't want to see that animation play out. That would be much better. So I can see them fixing that soon. I hope they fix that soon. It'd be a nice fix. But I was hoping for more information about slightly more important things. For example, Shaman King finally got added to the game. And people want to know, will more content be added in the future? Will Yo ever be reprinted? Or was that like a one and done thing? Because that's a short banner. And, you know, any more information would have been nice, really. But for now, I guess we remain clueless on these matters. But speaking of Shaman King, just to touch on it a little more, we got an illustration from the creator of Shaman King, Hiroyuki Take, and this illustration was really cool to see. It doesn't really tell us too much, but the fact that he is currently working for another magazine, another publisher, another company, but despite that, he was able to create an illustration of Yo, and it's talking about Jumputi heroes. It's for Jumputi heroes, and you know that's Shonen Jump. That's Shueisha. Feels like maybe the bridges weren't burnt. Maybe there's hope. There's faith. There's belief. I really do hope that that bridge is very much open for more content in the future, but truth be told, this image neither confirms nor denies that. It just sort of gives us that touch of hope. One interesting fact that you may have missed, it's not that interesting, but it's a small little Easter egg in the image. At the bottom, where it says, everyone, let's be friends, this is actually referencing Take's current company, the company that he has moved to, Kodansha. The word there that they've used for friends, or it's like good friends or something like that. Nakayoshi. You can see it in the bottom right here in hiragana, and that has clearly been stylized differently, and there's a reason for that. The reason is actually because Nakayoshi is the name of a Kodansha magazine, and you can see the font that they've used there is the exact same as the title for that font. So he's just having a little bit of fun. It seems the situation remains that he and Shaman King are obviously still with Kodansha. That's not going to change. But we no longer have to pretend that Shaman King never ran in Weekly Shonen Jump. It's a part of Shonen Jump's history, and for now at least, it can be honoured in Jumputi Heroes. And I pray, I pray that moving forward, we can see more of it. Now, let's really get into it. The next event, which we've officially had the title for, the Jumputi Festival Dream All-Star event. It was noted on the roadmap as Jumputi Festa, and obviously it's being released sort of alongside or around the same time as a real-world event, Jump Festa, which is being held in December. But the difference is, on the roadmap it says Jumputi Festa, but we know the full title of the event is Jumputi Festival Dream All-Star. The preview banner image has a pretty appealing look to it. It's got this like crystalline border, and in the background they've actually chosen the old Golden Week background from back when like Snake Man Luffy was originally added to the game. And then you've got this bright gold text with these like golden leaves and vines and stuff decorating the text, and there's like this massive golden rainbow star behind it all. We have also had, as of recording this video, 4 of the characters being buffed announced. They are Astra and Yuno, Tanjiro and Giyu, Shirayasha and Takasugi, and Kazuki and Tokiko. The news also seems to be suggesting that there is more buffed units to be revealed tonight, with the data download seemingly being tomorrow night, and then the maintenance and app update being the following night, with the event officially dropping December 1st at midnight. The interesting point about this all these buffs, I suppose, is that they're all dual units. But other than that, they don't really have anything in common. They aren't really from like the same archetypes. And, you know, out of the 4 of them, only one of them is from a series that was supposed to be featured in this event. Now, there is an argument about the series featured in this event. There are 5 series that maybe they were trying to indicate something a little bit more with what they showed on the roadmap. The series we're talking about, of course, One Piece, My Hero Academia, Sakamoto Days, Black Clover, and Hunter x Hunter. And of these series, Hunter x Hunter is notably bigger on the roadmap, but that could just be like a weird scaling thing. I mean, they had 5 series there, and the way they laid it out, it was going to be 4 or 6 series, and they've done 5, so the 5 takes up the space where the 5 and 6 would have been. I guess it might suggest something, it might not. It's hard to say. I mean, many have speculated, sometimes myself included, that we might be getting like a Hunter x Hunter Densetsu or Muso. Obviously, we already had one of those earlier this year, but I'd like to talk more on those possibilities in a bit. Personally, I don't think the size of the Hunter x Hunter logo means anything here, but potentially, just because there's only 5 series on the roadmap, that doesn't necessarily mean only these 5 series would be featured. For a start, it could, I mean, the way things have been going, it could mean that those 5 series are getting limited, or maybe like one of them gets a Muso or Densetsu or whatever, and the others are all limited. And there could be other series featured with like hero grade units, event grade units, whatever. Or also, in terms of other series, I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be series that are already in the game, or at least at the time of the roadmap. Like, what if there was more Shaman King content here? They wouldn't have put that there because they hadn't officially announced Shaman King yet, so it wouldn't have been there. Or if there's other new series coming, again, it hasn't been announced yet, so it wouldn't be put there. So those are possibilities. And the only other thing we really have that's like a potential new thing that could come during this event is the new Legend Summon ability. But as we know nothing about this, and we can't even be sure that it will come during this event, we just know it's coming sometime during December, I don't really have that much to say on that. I think there's some slightly more interesting things I would like to speculate about. So I want to discuss some of the things we might see from this event. In theory, it should be quite a sizable one. I mean, it's almost a 3-week event. We know this because the event starts December 1st for sure. But Jump Festa, the real life event, is the weekend of the 16th and the 17th. So certainly the event in theory shouldn't end until the 17th, I would say, at the earliest. I think we have slowly been transitioning away from the old way of doing things, and what I mean by that is I think we in general see less event and hero grade units and see more limited Muso and Densetsu grade units than we used to. I suspect that the new formula for Jumputi is something like 1 or 2 new top tier units, Muso / Densetsu, every 2 months or so. I say 1 or 2 because we don't have a lot of examples to work with yet, but in my personal opinion, I think they will probably proceed with the ultimate token store they released during the 5.5 anniversary, and I think it just makes a lot of sense to release a new Muso with each new Densetsu. I think we're gonna be moving towards averaging a seasonal limited per month, roughly, approximately. We probably don't hit that average this year. We're probably looking at more like 7 or 8 for this year. But the uptick in the amount of these units being released as the year went on might suggest that that's the sort of pace we're going to hit next year. I see us hitting over 10 seasonal limits next year for sure. Now, in terms of just standard limiteds or limiteds in general, the number can vary quite wildly from month to month, from event to event. But around 4 to 5 a month seems to be sort of what they're aiming for. By the end of this year, we will hit 50 or over 50 limiteds for the year. But by the end of next year, I expect us to exceed that number quite dramatically. Then for heroes, they know players aren't keen on them being phased out completely, so I'm sure they're going to keep them around. But as for the numbers, I think by the end of this year, the hero and limited numbers are going to be fairly similar. Like, we're talking between 50 and 60 for both. But I expect that next year we're going to see a shift towards limiteds being favoured more. So that limited number could go up, and I think that hero number could come down a little bit. Now, as for event units, the devs have been reducing the numbers of event units consistently over the course of the entire game. I think it's a shame, but I think they feel that they found their sweet spot with around 3 event units for most events, and then for some bigger events they'll get 4, and then when needed they'll chuck a legend summon in to sort of flesh out the event. With all of that said, let's discuss how I see this event playing out. Firstly, do I think there will be a Muso or Densetsu in this event? Now, I can't say for sure, but to me it sort of feels like there will be. I think it makes a lot of sense to release a Muso or a Densetsu at the start of a 2-month period with the intent to release like seasonal limiteds as the headline acts for the other events that will run during that period. For example, if they were to release a new Densetsu here during this event and have that banner run until, say, the end of January, then you'll have the Christmas seasonal to headline the Christmas event and a New Year seasonal to headline the New Year event. This, in my opinion, makes sense because it means the most recent Densetsu or Muso is always available, even to new players who join for another reason, like a series being featured in another event. They can still go back and they can get the most recent Densetsu or Muso or whatever, because those banners will still be running. Part of what's feeding into this mindset for me is the fact that all of the banners in the game seem to be ending on November 30th. And we'll be starting with a fresh, clean slate on December 1st. To me, this seems like the best way to handle things moving forward. We're not going to be talking too much about the Christmas and the New Year events here today. As I mentioned before, I expect both of those events to have big seasonal limiteds headlining the event. But I don't necessarily expect a seasonal limited for Jumputi Festa, because potentially we could be seeing a Densetsu or a Muso launching there, and I think that would probably be enough for now. So I think there's a good chance we do see a Densetsu or Muso for this event, or rather, I don't necessarily think it's definitely going to happen, but I think it's something I could see happening. So the headliner for this event can be like a new Densetsu, and it may be like we could have a new Muso in the Ultimate Token store. In my opinion, I think they should continue to add content to that store. You know, keep adding new gacha that let you get those tokens. And then it's like this cool alternate route you can take. You know, there's a new Densetsu, there's new limiteds, but you also have the option of the new Muso. And, you know, even if you don't want the new Muso, Goku will still be in there. If you don't have a Goku, an opportunity to get him as well. So it gives you a lot more options of where to go, especially in big events where they're going to give lots of rubies and lots of free summons and stuff like that. It makes you feel like you could just go whichever way you want to go. Additionally, even if the Taiwan server doesn't shut down and does continue to operate as it has been, let's say this 10-day period was just a blip and then they're back at it starting from tomorrow or whatever, that server has actually shown no signs of replacing this new style of Muso unit anyway. You know, they've got the same Ultimate Token store that we've got. It's just full up with items. There's no new units in there. They already had the version of Goku that we got as a Muso as a free-to-play unit over there. So, hypothetically, if you did add something to the Ultimate Token store for this event, even if Taiwan does have the same event that we're going to get, not necessarily a problem. They're not necessarily going to need to replace that unit. So there may be some units that in the past we wouldn't have considered, and now maybe we can. Alongside the top tiers and the gacha department, you know, the Muso, the Densetsu, if we do get a Muso or Densetsu, I'd say 3 limited units. If we don't, maybe 4. I mean, you could put a seasonal there, I don't know, but certainly you could have 4 limiteds there. I suppose, I don't know, things have kind of been a bit strange recently with the limiteds being released, so it's tough to really theorize, especially because we don't know what the Ruby situation looks like. It's been pretty good recently, but if you're going to release a Muso or Densetsu, the number needs to go up a lot, and we just don't know yet, so let's not go too crazy. And while I think we may get a seasonal limited because the devs just seem to love them, we just got Yo, and like surely we're going to get one for Christmas and probably even for New Year too, so it'd be nice to have at least a 1 event break from seasonal limiteds because they do cost more. And so the 3 or 4 limited units, there's probably like 2 new heroes between the lot of them. It's a 3-week event. You probably get like 4 event units out of that. I think those are some pretty good numbers. So in terms of the actual characters, let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about if a new Densetsu / Muso is added. What are we looking at? We have to assume that if one is added, that it probably will be from one of the 5 series they listed on the roadmap. I mean, for the sake of speculation in this video, I'm going to be trying my best to stick to those 5 series for this event as a whole, as much as possible, except in instances where I feel there is a valid or exceptional reason or some sort of plausible possibility for something else being added. Of those 5 series, of course, if we're talking about Densetsus, 3 of them already have a Densetsu. My Hero Academia has All Might, One Piece has Luffy, and Hunter x Hunter has Ging. Now, I would like to take this chance to point out that moving forwards, we will eventually reach a point where series like One Piece and Naruto and Dragon Ball will probably be getting more than one of each top tier unit, at least if we continue at our current pace. However, I don't think we're quite at that point yet. So that leaves us, of those 5 series, with Sakamoto Days and Black Clover. As excited as I am by the prospect of a top tier Sakamoto Days unit, I have a feeling Black Clover would be much more likely. However, there still aren't really that many options. The general trend we seem to have found for Densetsu and Musou is that Musou are sort of past tense heroes, characters who may have appeared in the current story or may not, but right now they are either dead or one way or another no longer exist in the current story. Densetsu characters, as of each of them being added to the game, are currently still alive and still exist in the current story. If we weren't talking about a top tier unit but rather a limited, there's loads of obvious picks for Black Clover, but as we are talking about a Densetsu, it's a little bit more complicated. In retrospect, I think the obvious choice was Julius. However, he's already been added to as a limited, so yes, I guess we could get a version 2 Lucius. Maybe it could be like his younger form, or it could be his adult form, he like transforms into his younger form in Win Animation or something like that. You could also maybe get like Roropechka or Lucius, but to be honest, I think we have a lot more room to cook if we consider Musou for the series listed on the roadmap and instead talk about something else for the Densetsu. My rogue shout for a Densetsu, I mean, it's not really that out there. It's something we've talked about many times before. It's, of course, Gold Experience Requiem Giorno Giovanna from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind. As we mentioned before, Taiwan restrictions might be becoming less and less of an issue in the near future. And there are a few small reasons that I am thinking of Giorno here. For one, they've used the Golden Week background for this event. For those that don't know, we've been speculating about a top tier Giorno unit for many, many years. Before even the top tiers became a thing, even when we were just talking about limiteds, we were talking about limited Gold Experience Requiem for a long, long time. And a lot of time we speculated that it could, or rather it should be, for Golden Week. I think the background, you know, it doesn't really say too much. I just sort of wonder if the devs are aware of the fact that over time, that is something that has been speculated many, many, many times. And maybe they did think, you know what, we'll drop that in the background as an Easter egg. Probably not, but to be fair, this is just one of a few reasons. It's just a small reason, and there are other reasons. So let's talk about those. For the Dream All-Star event, we have Giorno, whose dream is to become a gang star. I know it's just wordplay, but come on, guys. He also, very importantly, has a star-shaped birthmark, much like the star we see in the event teaser logo. Now, you could say that applies to any of the JoJo's, and you'd be correct. But worth mentioning that the decoration on this icon is very floral looking, and that does tie into his stand's nature-based powers. A lot of this is very loose speculation, to be honest, but we don't even know if there's going to be a top tier unit, and if there is, we don't know who it's going to be. There's no information. So it's just a fun idea. It's something I'd love to be true. I think we have to remember that stuff like not just the logo, not just the title, but even the overall theme of the event, these things just quite often mean nothing. The devs just have picked a number of popular units that they think will sell, and that's it. That'll do for now. But I do think, hypothetically, Giorno would be very cool. I also think if they wanted to do a Jonathan Musou, that would be so cool, especially like if you made his ultimate attack like all of the JoJo's part 1 to 6 as like an ultimate attack, that would go crazy hard. But you know, I did say for the Muso spot, I would at least consider the series that they mentioned on the roadmap. So for now, we'll put that to the side and we'll say, hypothetically, if we did get a Densetsu, Giorno, and for the Muso, well, One Piece is already ruled out here. It already has a Muso. But Hunter x Hunter, Black Clover, My Hero Academia, and Sakamoto Days, all still very much on the cards. For Hunter x Hunter, an obvious choice would be a new Netero. Much like Julius from Black Clover, I think we can agree that he's very much deserving of a top tier unit. Yes, it would be a new version of like pretty much the same character from the same point in the story, but there's certainly enough content left to work with that you could make a new version of him. And then for My Hero Academia, I think the options are slightly less concrete. You could definitely make an argument for a few different characters here, maybe like Star and Stripe, I mentioned before, as a potential limited, could work as a Muso. Nana Shimura, also another option. And I would be happy with either, but I don't necessarily think either of them would be chosen here. Then we have Sakamoto Days. Now, to be honest, they've only really touched a very early part of the story. I don't know if there's that many options here, per se. You know, for a Densetsu, you know, you might make an argument for Takamura or for like a young Sakamoto. But I can at least say for sure that in terms of a Muso, there aren't really that many options from that early part of the story. So I don't think they'll add one. And then finally for Black Clover, I think we have Lumiere. I think it's the best option. And I think if we were going to get a Muso and a Densetsu, I think if we get Giorno as a Densetsu and we get a Muso Lumiere, I think that would be a pretty solid start to the event. But assuming that we don't get any top tier units, let's just ignore that for now and talk about the rest of the event. In an event that has no top tiers, I don't think it would be absurd to say that there could be 4 limited. So let's talk hypothetically about a 4 limited event, mainly focusing on the series featured on the roadmap. One Piece is probably the hardest one to make a choice for because there are so many options. The anime is getting ready to move into the Egghead arc now. And, you know, OPTC recently got that adult Momo as a new red poster unit. So definitely he could be a character to consider. I also think a V2 Yamato would be pretty cool to get at some point. I mean, really, we also haven't really had any of the Minks or any of the, like, the Red Scabbards or, like, lots of characters haven't had a fair shot of being, like, a cool limited. We've had loads of V2s. So it is really tough to pick. If we refer back to the event title, the Dream All-Star event, well, in Wano we were introduced to the Beast Pirates All-Stars, King, Queen, and Jack. These 3 have appeared in the game previously as event-only characters, but could we maybe see them as playable now? I don't think I'd necessarily expect to see them as limited, but if we are talking about them, we also have to consider Enma Zoro and Blue Leg Sanji. Potential options for limiteds. You could also obviously make an argument for Law and Kids, especially with all these dual units getting buffed. I think a lot of people are expecting to see some new dual limiteds. I think possibly there is a chance that we're seeing, you know, it looks like 4 dual limiteds being buffed. There could be a new ability tied to dual units, that they're going to release a new dual unit that gets it, and it's something they want to give to some old dual units when they get buffed. I don't know what that could be, I don't know how that could be implemented, but something to consider, I guess. But yeah, I wouldn't really be surprised if we actually did get like a Zoro and Sanji V2, even though we just got this V1 this year. But you know, both of those units are definitely very usable as like standalone limiteds. So maybe they save that for later. I think Law and Kid is probably the best choice. Maybe not the most exciting, but I think it makes the most sense. From Black Clover, I'd really love to see Star Magic Yuno. I'm not sure if the devs would do it. You know, the anime hasn't covered that part yet, and recently the devs have been more and more shying away from covering the manga exclusive content for a lot of series. I would really like to see, if we're talking dual units, Yami and Nacht dual unit. Obviously, Asta and Yami is an option, and a lot of people have been saying that would be the most likely one to come. But for me, I'm a fan of Nacht. He only appears as an event unit so far in the game. I feel like that kind of needs to be fixed. Yes, there is a big moment with him and Yami that hasn't quite made it to the anime yet, but I feel like because those two characters have been introduced and their powers have been shown off, you could make them into a dual unit, and I don't think that would really be an issue for them to be implemented, even if it's covering sort of manga-related, manga-exclusive stuff. Now, for Hunter x Hunter, I think we can all agree that the obvious choice would be Hisoka. He still only has 2 event-grade units and nothing else. Chrollo has 3 units now, 2 of which are limited. And the most recent limited was from his battle against Hisoka. So it 100% makes sense. Obviously, eventually we will get Kurapika in the suit, and I'm sure there are some other Hunter x Hunter units that I'm not thinking of that we could get added. But this just makes a lot of sense this time around. Then for my hero, there are still quite a few options for limiteds. Weirdly, we don't have Deku and Bakugo. I know you could make an argument that the 2 of them together, it doesn't happen that often that they're working together. But it's happened a few times in the story, and I mean, it's happened enough in the same way that, like, you know, we got Sasuke and Naruto, we got Goku and Vegeta. It's kind of similar sort of idea. It could be a unit, it's not a unit. We also still don't have a limited Todoroki. And, you know, depending on how far we're moving into the final arc, there are definitely some options we could still grab. For me personally, I don't think I'd give them a limited here. I think Black Clover deserves it more right now, because my hero's got a lot of attention this year and Black Clover hasn't really. And I would say, you know, Hunter x Hunter, it's sort of in a weird sporadic situation, but 100% getting Hisoka here makes sense. And One Piece is One Piece. So if one of these series was going to not get limited, for me, it's my hero. And I think a standard gacha Ochako makes sense. Only a hero grade unit, not a limited. She could be a limited. I think if we're considering her big fight in the manga, certainly limited worthy. It's a very big moment, but I think it'd just be nice for her to at the very least, have a proper hero grade unit. And that could go with the Toga we got earlier this year, a proper hero grade unit. Having the 2 of those would be very nice. And then from Sakamoto Days, obviously there's still tons of untouched content, but as the devs have mentioned her by name, and she still isn't in the game, I think Lu Xiaotan is just an obvious choice for a hero grade unit. I think a lot of people are expecting her to be added, praying that she's not an event grade unit. And then for the final limited slot, I've already covered all of the series they mentioned on the roadmap, so who would I choose? Well, for me, I think this event feels like it wants to add some new series. I know we just got one, I know we just got Shaman King, but with a name like Dream All-Stars and the fact that it's tying into Jump Festa, which is obviously this huge ensemble of a ton of Shueisha properties, Shonen Jump series, I think for me, it just makes sense that they add a new series here. They're like, say, come look at this dream team we've assembled, and why not choose something that has an ongoing anime? And as we've got a bunch of dual units getting buffed, why not choose a series that can debut with a dual unit? And the series that makes sense in both cases is, of course, Undead Unluck. I think having Andy and Fuko debut as a dual limited, I know it's just a week or so after Yo, but in a way that's like a huge statement of intent from the devs to be like, look, I know for a long time certain series weren't getting added, bang, here you go, you've got one that you never thought would be added, and then just like a week or 2 later a series that's like from current Jump. The manga's still running, the anime's still running, and maybe you'll see more next year. Like, come and play the game. That'd be really cool. And then as for event units, I think 4. I think 4 is fair. I would have Gina from Undead Unluck. I would have Lucifero from Black Clover. Killer from One Piece. Killer's enemy. There's lots of One Piece like enemy only. I feel like Killer would make sense to be just added as like an event unit at least. And then Cortopi from Hunter x Hunter. Got to flesh out those spiders, and obviously if we're getting Hisoka, then that makes sense. I just really wanted a nice mix of units from different series, while still focusing on the 5 series they mentioned. Yes, I did add in a little bit of extra something, but I just thought this would be a nice event. And, well, that's it for today, I think. Thank you for sitting through this, and I'm sure most of the things I talked about today will be irrelevant or proven wrong fairly soon. And when that time comes, I'm sure I'll be back with another video. But until then, I'll see you all next time.